Yeah, yeah. So we're getting ready to release the new spring menu at the end of the week, and I should be doing this a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we came up with a new recipe. Tastes like sugarcane. So we're gonna call it the sugarcane latte. And
Wow.
you're trying it right now as a cold brew, which I absolutely love. So yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
it's actually,
cool.
well, yeah, when the flavor sits well, you know you got something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you make like all your own cold brew here and everything?
Everything is done in house. You know, we've got our own little proprietary recipe,
Hmm.
and you'll taste the distinction between different shops, right?
Hmm.
And everybody has their own way of doing things. We tend to use a lot of infused spices into our
Hmm.
recipes, and that's what people taste. That's the difference, right?
Hmm.
So they'll remember it, right? If you go across the street to one of the
Hmm.
national brands, there's nothing that says wow, right? Unless you
Hmm.
add a lot of sugar. So if you're trying to do something that's low sugar or no sugar, but
Hmm.
yet want a lot of flavor, right?
Hmm.
Spices will get you to that point.
Very nice.
Yeah, and unique, right? So the sensory exploration, the taste buds, the flavor
Hmm.
tones, they actually complement coffee very well.
Hmm. So I know we were talking a little bit about this before, but if you just want to kind of share your background, like kind of a general overview of everything, like how you got started in this industry.
So when I came out of Rutgers, right, I went to Wall Street. Ultimately, ended up in a shop that was bundling subprime mortgages, right? And we were doing pretty well. The market was just getting started at that point. You know, 2001, 2002, the deal volumes just went through the roof, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I had this itch for doing something on my own. And meanwhile, aside from my Wall Street career, I was exploring different types of business models, right? One of the models that I really kind of gravitated towards was the model of dry cleaning, right? And
Mm.
dry cleaning, what made it work is that you've got a central plant, right? What we
Mm-hmm.
call the hub. And then you can scatter the market with retail only stores. So the capex
Mm.
that's involved in building those retail stores versus the plant,
Mm-hmm.
most of your fixed costs are already in your plant, right? So the capital required to build retail stores isn't as significant,
Mm-hmm.
and you can generate significant margin with that model. So that was very attractive, and I went on. Aside from being on Wall Street, I was taking dry cleaning courses and learning and getting certified and getting ready to enter that business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as we were looking at potential opportunities, this ad or whatever it was, this communication came through that Dunkin was looking for new franchise owners, and kind of reviewing the model and understanding. The business behind Dunkin', it was very similar to the dry cleaning model, where you make a significant investment in a central location where you're going to do a lot of your baking, your production work, and thereafter the stores that are built are now going to rely on the primary bakery, so the hub, and these other stores become
Mm.
spokes, right? So not as capital intensive on the investment. So just to kind of put it in perspective, I could build a full producing Dunkin' for about $750,000, right?
Mm.
To build a retail store that on its front looks like a regular Dunkin', but doesn't do the production work in the back. So it has a much smaller kitchen operation in the back end, right? I could build that store for about four and a quarter to 450, right?
Mm.
So, 250, $300,000 cheaper than what my plant facility build is. But now the margin that I'm going to be making on those retail only stores versus the plant facility, right? You'll never make money in the plant. You're going to make money on the retail
Mm.
stores because you don't have
Mm.
that labor base, right?
Okay.
Bakers cost a lot of money, right? Yeah. And if you're baking two times a day, just think about the payroll, right? You need to make sales. You need to do $1 million just to cover your cost in that business, especially with your debt service. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So ultimately, they're producing for multiple stores, right? So, and at a certain point, the capacity also becomes an issue, right? So the store that we had built in North Brunswick,
Mm-hmm.
this we can service up to 10 to 12 stores out of it because we had so much square footage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we built it for that need, right?
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't have a problem until I got to store number 12 and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're out of capacity, right? Yeah, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
just the incremental investment in these units and the margin that you end up making, right,
Mm-hmm.
on the retail stores are very attractive.
Okay.
So I guess like when you got the itch to do something more, is this something that you had growing up, or did you have someone in your life that was an entrepreneur? Because being an entrepreneur is not really a natural thing. The natural thing is just go to college, get the job,
Right.
stay in it, put money in the 401k. Was there anything like kind of guiding you that way?
And expect that company to take care of you,
Yeah.
right, for the long term. I think that was the mindset in the 50s and 60s, right?
Mm-hmm.
When came back home from war. Okay, the government's going to help you out, and we had some very successful programs, right? Companies, you were going to be with them for years. You're going to retire with the same company that you started with.
Yeah.
Today, the world is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
For us, for me, my parents came in the late 60s, right? And this is a new country, right? So we're immigrants, right? My parents were immigrants. And, being in this new land, new country, it kind of chokes me up a little because, we see how hard they worked.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see how hard they worked. And, my dad, he held 2, 3 jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gets emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You'll
Yeah.
be doing a lot of editing, right?
Yeah.
Good. No.
Mm-hmm.
So just to kind of get us the food, get us the clothing,
Mm-hmm.
when these immigration bills were passed and we had the influx of immigrants coming in the late 60s,
Mm-hmm.
right? There was limits on how much money they can actually bring to the U.S., right? So
Mm-hmm.
now, people are coming over, they might have $10, $12 in their pocket by the time they land in
Mm-hmm.
the States, right? And back then, fortunately, it doesn't cost you $50 for an Uber ride back then, right? I mean, you can get around for a couple of bucks, right? You can fill up a tank of gas for a few pennies, right? So at that time, that was enough to get settled, right? To get started, right? To go on your job hunt, right? And generally, you would come, you would see, what other friend, family, maybe someone close by in the village back home, maybe living in a certain area, right? And everybody helped each other out, right? You would stay with them until you got on your feet, right? Whatever it took was the mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these were communities that grew together and stuck together, right? They stuck
Mm-hmm.
together, they grew together, and they supported one another, right? So that was what I saw growing up, right? It's that hard work, that commitment, right,
Mm-hmm.
to get settled, right, and then you've got to deal with the culture barriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not acclimated, right?
Mm-hmm.
We speak differently, we eat differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes part of who we are as first generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we see the world through a different lens, right?
Yeah.
And being able to show and allow others into your culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Years ago it wasn't as easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got global diversity. Everybody here has some sort of immigrant bloodline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the good news about what we see today with this younger generation, when I say younger generation, I mean 35 and younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're more receptive, a little more open-minded. They're willing to try new adventures. They're willing to explore authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have different tolerance for flavors, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I always do is I benchmark myself against what the big nationals are, right? Like,
Mhm.
what does the big national consider to be spicy, right?
Mm.
And that's what I will interpret as a baseline, right? And I'm very
Mm.
surprised at what I see today. It's the heat levels are up, right?
Mhm.
Which means that we can take more and greater risk, right?
Mhm.
That if we're going to try to blend a certain spice that's not familiar to mainstream Americans, well,
Mhm.
it might be a risk worth taking
Mhm.
because we might find a market for it,
Yeah.
right? And we might find that customer base that actually gravitates toward it, right?
Mhm.
So, using my development, my childhood, everything that we've kind of been through and seen, right? That's what Frappe Joe is today, right?
Mhm.
It's that expression of
Mhm.
who I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think as a business owner, even as just a person, I think what makes you different is your own personal lived experience, and if you're true to that, no one can ever copy what you
Right.
produce, which is really amazing.
Yeah, it's funny when you say that, because what I do is I document a lot of our recipes, our procedures, right?
Mhm.
And I always get other owners that say, "Hey, you sure you want to share that stuff, right? You know, if I were to walk across the street to the Rite Aid tomorrow,
Mhm.
and I don't see that bus coming, and I get hit by that bus, what happens to the business, right?
Mhm.
Does it just shut down, right?
Mhm.
Or can my staff continue it, right?
Mhm.
But if they need to continue it, they need to learn, right?
Mhm.
And they need to know the recipes. They need to know what makes us different, right?
Mhm.
So we teach all of that, right? And I have
Mhm.
no problem, in giving that away, right? And
Mhm.
sure, there's always a risk that, okay, now I'm going to go sell this information, this knowledge, right,
Mhm.
that you've worked so hard for, to your competition, right? Yeah, you know what? Go ahead. It'll never be the same. It's not made with the same kind of love. It's not
Mhm.
made with the same kind of dedication, and
Mhm.
it's never going to be, let's say, if you're the innovator, people are
Mhm.
always going to follow,
Mhm.
right? And if you constantly keep innovating, they got to keep following, right?
Mhm.
So that's how I view it, right?
Mhm.
It's that it's okay. You can take my recipe, right? Because I'm just going to make something better, right? Yeah.
Best you can
Nice.
do by copying.
Yeah. The history of Dunkin' is funny.
Mhm.
That's we used to joke as franchise owners. Never great at innovating, always great at copying.
You want to tell us a little bit about your journey at Dunkin', because that was kind of the start of everything.
Yeah.
As to like what your experience was like there, and learning to make
Yeah.
drinks and cooking all that stuff.
So I was 27 years old when we first learned of the Dunkin' opportunity, right? Did our due diligence, tried to see how we can put all this together. I mean, obviously, it's a very hefty financial nut, right? So, in terms of liquidity and
Mhm.
ready to invest liquid assets, right?
Mhm.
It's pretty significant, right? You're looking at, to sign a 3-store deal. I think at that time the cash requirement per store, I think, was about 450,000.
Oh
Let's
my
just say half a
gosh.
million, right? But your net worth per store was 1.25 million, right? So in other words, you need
Mhm.
to have 450 of liquid cash with a net worth of 1.25 million, right? So nearly 40% of your asset base would have to be in cash, right? Times three, right? So now if you're doing a 3-store SDA, what we call a store development deal,
Mhm.
right? Store development agreement, you would need 450 times 3, so 3.5 million if my math is correct,
Mhm.
and then 1.25 in net worth, so 3.75 million in net worth to even be considered for a franchise, right? Um, yeah, so I mean, we made it happen, and the good thing about um, the cultural difference is that groups support you, right? And I'll give you an analogy. In the hotel industry, nearly 90% of hotels are owned by South Asian Indians from a
Mm.
very specific region in India,
Wow.
Gujarat, and these are the Patel community, right? And the reason is that one person many years ago in the late '60s, early '70s, saw an opportunity to get involved in a motel. Gujarati, where we're from, the
Mhm.
bloodline is very merchant, very business, very tradesman, right?
Mm.
So it's almost like in our DNA to do
Mhm.
something on our own, right?
Mm.
And as these Patels got involved in the hotel business and saw the ability to generate good profits, right? But it comes at a cost, right? The reason why they're able to do this is because the prior management, they had a staff of housekeepers, they had maintenance staff, right? They had people doing things for them, which cut into your margins, right?
Mm.
When an immigrant walks in, right? They know I can probably work all day and eliminate all these other jobs, right? If I just do it myself, right?
Mm.
So if you've got 100,000 in expense under prior ownership, new ownership steps in, that's 100,000 of profit now, right? Or towards my
Mm.
livelihood, right? And hey, we don't need big homes, right? A lot of these motels had a front desk. Right behind that front desk, there was like a 2-bedroom apartment back there, right? Where the kitchen facility was and the bedrooms were, right? So now you get a family member that joins you. Everybody cleans up together. Everybody does the hotel work together. Everybody
Mm.
eats together, right?
Mm.
And one member supports the other, right? And that's how we grow, right? So in today's world, I think the significance and the visibility of South Asians today, especially even in the corporate world, right? A lot of these CEOs are of South Asian descent, right?
Mhm.
Because it's that discipline, it's that dedication to constant growth, right? How can I support you and make you better, but at the same time, you're helping me to get better as well, right? So
Mm.
that just snowballs, and we see that today, right?
Mhm.
What started 50 years ago, right? Some of the biggest hotel owners today are South Asian, right? So when I entered the Dunkin' world, yeah, I didn't have that kind of money. I was 27 years old, right?
Mm.
27 years old. Where did I get that money from, right? Well, I was eating cucumber sandwiches, so I saved like crazy when I was working on Wall Street. People would go on. I realized real quickly after graduating college, I had a $34,000 salary, right? If I ate breakfast and lunch out, I'm
Mhm.
screwing myself, right? So all that went out the window real fast. I learned how to brew coffee at home, right? And for me, it all starts with instant, right? Nice and easy, right? You know, uh, uh, Eating lunch outside may have cost anywhere from $8 to $12. If I just bring my own sandwich to work, right, I can get away with about $4 or $5 per meal, right? And then the price of cold cuts, it was getting a little expensive. Just cut out the cold cuts. Now it becomes veggies, right? So now your per meal cost is down to like $2. That's how we did it, right? We saved a lot of money, and then whatever we didn't have, we approached family members. Yeah,
Mm.
and it was me and my college roommate that had done it together. So
Wow.
we reached out to who we knew, and my contacts came through with financials. His contacts came through with financials, and
Mhm.
together we were able to satisfy the Dunkin' requirement. We built our first store in 2002. Went on to
Okay.
build 5 more stores. Right,
Mhm.
and the one thing that I was pretty good at was the ability to look at traffic patterns and find a site that might not necessarily be the most visible site,
Mhm.
right? But in terms of accessibility, easy in, easy out, right?
Mm.
The ability to park up front next to the door, those
Mm.
were drivers. Right? If I can find that in a
Mhm.
good traffic flow,
Mhm.
that was my location. That's the market I would go after, right?
Mm.
And the best part about having that type of ability is you're going to pay a lower rent compared to the Class A location, right? And a Class A
Mm.
location, obviously, that's that's cream of the crop, right? But if you could find a B in an A market and make it into an A asset, that's talent, right? So what we were good at was finding the right deals. And just to kind of put it in perspective, the industry considers 10% of sales as a good rent, right? As a decent rent roll.
Mm-hmm.
If you come in that range, you've got a solid business, right? As long as you're profitable, right? Our portfolio rent was 4.75%. So we were generating significant volume, but not paying the industry average on rent, right? So we were milking cash.
Wow.
So we did extremely well, and it became part of my problem also.
Yeah.
The attractiveness of the business, what happened afterwards, and we can go through it as well,
Mhm.
right? But that also made us attractive on the refranchising side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's funny, when we pulled in, that was the first thing she said. She was like, "This is a great location." We were looking at it, 'cause it's right in the corner.
Mm-hmm. Easy to park.
Yeah.
Yeah, right off a major road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like a wide entry, like if you decide last minute you want to pop in, like you can just
Yeah.
You could still cut across.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So
Yeah.
this used to be occupied by Starbucks.
Oh,
Yeah, this used to
Really?
be occupied by Starbucks, and Starbucks did extremely well. So
Mm-hmm.
one good thing about these guys is they'll go through leaps and bounds just to understand a market and what drives the traffic, right?
Mm.
So once they identify a market,
Mm-hmm.
they've done their homework, right?
Mm.
So this operated as Starbucks for nearly 20 years, right? And it was a very, very busy location, right?
Mm-hmm.
They decided to go onto the other side of the intersection with a
Mm.
standalone drive-through, right?
Okay.
So what in this location alone, I mean, I think they were doing about 1.2 million, right?
sales.
Wow.
Yeah, and to make that decision to go standalone drive-through,
Mm-hmm.
the expectation is to generate an additional 30 to 50% in sales, right? So this location was expected, if they were to convert it into a drive-through, instead of 1.2, their benchmark was now 1.6, right? And I think up front they started doing that. I mean, it was a very busy location up there. Yeah, extremely busy. I don't see it as busy today though.
Wonder why. What are like some of the common misconceptions about owning a coffee shop? Because I feel like it's very glamorized in my eyes, or at least like to us, I feel like it sounds so cool to be like, oh, I'm going to open up a coffee shop. Like what are some of the things in the background that some people like don't really realize and that you bring to your business that might be, different than someone else?
So I mean, I think that's a very good question and very important to answer, especially depending on who the audience is that's going to be listening here, right? And we get a lot of high school teachers coming to us. Hey, can you talk about entrepreneurship, right? And yeah, absolutely, right? Because I think it's very important for kids to understand this, right? Early on, you get a lot of adults that make a lot of mistakes, right? See, from the outside in, the world is glamorous, right? Oh, wow, they're busy. They've got customers, they've got a good product. Anytime I go there, they seem to have good traffic going on. They must be making a killing, right? Better than my $500,000 investment banking job, right? Well, let's put things into perspective. What does it take to run a great business, right? And we'll kind of put this into the food scene, right? Into the food world. There's a saying, I think it's like, what is it, a 95% failure rate?
In the
Right?
first.
For food, for restaurants, yeah.
Within the first,
First year, I think it's within the first 2 years. If you can make it past year 4, you've survived, right? It takes a good 2 years to get your name out there, right? It takes you another year or so to actually cover your costs, right? And then it takes, maybe to year 4 to year 5 to actually generate a profit, right? So what do you do in those first 5 years? What is the world like to you, right? It's nonstop. It's every single day There's no see the good thing about a corporate job is that once you leave, it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? Somebody's there to do the job, right? Somebody, you're replaceable, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's the reality. Let's not, think of it differently, right? There's somebody else that will do the job, right?
Mhm.
As a business owner, the buck stops with you, right?
Mhm.
That toilet gets backed up. Either you're going to call a plumber, which is going to cost you money, or you're going to fix it yourself,
Mhm.
right? That's what life is like, right?
Mhm.
24/7. You might have kids, you might have a family at home, and you're getting into a food business. People eat 7 days a week,
Mhm.
3 times the minimum per day, right? So you're constantly serving someone, right? And when you develop a concept, you've got this vision on how to execute it,
Mhm.
right? The next step of it is to replicate yourself.
Mhm.
So you need to hire someone and start training them, right?
Mhm.
So as you develop your staff, your team, right, you need people that believe in you. You need people
Mhm.
that want to believe in you, right? That you're going to guide them in the right direction, which is upwards, right?
Mhm.
So you're worried about your customers being serviced correctly. You're worrying about supplies being in stock
Mhm.
constantly. You're worried about the maintenance of your facility, the cleanliness of your facility, and then you're worried about constantly training someone,
Mhm.
because the other side of it is that person can leave. There's no attachment,
Yeah.
right? The only attachment there is a biweekly paycheck, right? If you don't need it anymore, you don't have to show up anymore, right?
Mhm.
And that's what happens, right? You deal with a lot of the nonsense, right?
Mhm.
When it's busy, it's glamorous. When it's
Mhm.
not so busy and you're doing the grunt work,
Mhm.
it's it's not for everyone. It's
Yeah.
not for everyone. It's constant, right? You see a lot of startups, in the tech world, right?
Mhm.
When you get the valuation, it's golden,
Mhm.
right? But what does it take to get the gold, right?
Mhm.
It's nonstop, right? People live on streets. People live
Mhm.
in cabins. They live in trailers, right? They're sharing a room or a garage with somebody else, right? They don't have the capital to live a certain lifestyle. When they
Mhm.
get the valuation, that's when it looks beautiful from everybody else's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Same thing as any business, right? It's
Yeah.
beautiful from the outside. There's a lot of work that goes inside. And
Yeah.
chances are in the restaurant business, if you see a successful restaurant,
Mhm.
look at the owner. That owner has failed numerous times because he's learned on every failure to
Mhm.
make something perfect. Yeah.
Mm. Also speak to like the quality of your ingredients and just like all of your products, because I feel like you take like a lot of pride in that and how you source things, and kind of talk to us like a little bit about that, because I feel like you have like a very different take on the average cup of coffee.
Yeah, so everything comes down to quality, right?
Mhm.
And sourcing is very important. So in the world of coffee, see, on the East Coast, we've got a lot of highway infrastructure, right? Which made franchising very attractive, right? Very consistent. Based on a brand, what you're going to get, right?
Mhm.
And over time, the brand begins to have its own magnet, right? It
Mhm.
speaks for itself. And eventually, depending on how you're capitalized, right, you've got to return a certain percentage to shareholders, right?
Mhm.
So, and shareholders expect constant growth, right? They don't want to see deterioration in the profits, right? But
Mhm.
other inflationary pressure takes place, right? So ultimately, decisions are made not by founders, but by managers to
Mhm.
lower the quality of goods going into the menu mix, right?
Mhm.
So, just to give you an example of my franchise national brand experience,
Mhm.
to get a pound of coffee into the Dunkin' store roasted, it would cost us at that time maybe $1.85 to $2.25 a pound, depending
Wow.
on where coffee was being traded on Wall Street, right? So today, looking at where we are
Mm-hmm.
and knowing people in the system, in the Dunkin system as well, I mean, their coffee hasn't moved much, right? I mean, let's just call it 250 a pound now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that you're getting for 250 a pound, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're getting a brand. You're not getting
Mm-hmm.
quality,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they're sourcing from throughout the world
Yeah.
and they're trying to protect margins for their stakeholders, their investors, their shareholders, and maintain a certain flavor profile, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they already know that if I source from throughout the world and I do it under this umbrella of fair trade, right? I'm going to get away by paying maybe a small premium over the spot price or what we call the C market price
Mm-hmm.
to these farmers that are producing for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if this guy isn't capable of doing it, another guy will, right? So coffee is like blueberries, right? In blueberry harvesting, you're going to have a batch of, unripened sour. You'll have something that's semi-ripened, which
Mm-hmm.
is semi-sweet, right? And then you're going to have fully ripened, which is totally sweet, right?
Mm-hmm.
That farmer is going to take the unripened sour and sell it to the juice guy at $1 a pound, right? And that guy is going to then introduce a lot of sugar to it and sell it as blueberry juice, right?
Mm-hmm.
The semi-sweet, he's going to sell for $2 a pound, right? Because he's going to sell it to the blueberry jam guy, and that jam guy is going to take a little bit of sugar, he's going to process it, he's going to make blueberry jam out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The super sweet, this is his harvest, right? This is where he's going to take to that specialty buyer that really enjoys good sweet blueberries, and he's going to go to a local farm market, find you, and sell it for $4.50 a pound. Coffee works the same way, right? You go in stages and grades of quality, right? The sour $1 a pound, that's going to franchises, right? The
Mm-hmm.
semi-sweet is going to your mid-tier players, right? The
Mm-hmm.
super sweet is going to go to specialty, right? Because we're interested in taking the best, right? So
Mm-hmm.
double A, triple A quality is what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that's going to score high, like wine has a ranking system, right?
Mm-hmm.
On taste and profile. Coffee's the same way.
Mm-hmm.
In specialty, we're looking at scores of anywhere from 88 to 92 in
Mm-hmm.
that range. Anything over 90 is golden, right? But 88 to 92, you can still get at a decent value and
Mm-hmm.
be able to sell it at a good price in your store, right? But that's
Mm-hmm.
the economics of coffee, right? So we're looking at quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we take that concept across the entire menu. Why would
Mm-hmm.
you offer an inferior croissant if you're offering super quality coffee,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I wouldn't say or good quality coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Super quality. You don't want to break the bank, right? But why would I introduce an inferior product into my menu mix if
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing something so special on the other side? It doesn't make sense, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I view what we do in terms of quality and ingredients. Like our bagels are damn good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that was a search, right? We
Mm-hmm.
went through so many vendors, testing, sampling,
Mm-hmm.
putting it through the grinder to see whether or not it's going to hold up. What does that bagel taste 3 days later?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I view it, right? If I can still say, okay, the quality's still there. It's not bad. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's a little hard and it's a little stale, but I can still toast this thing and so it's not bad, right? That means a certain
Mm-hmm.
level of love went into making it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how we view quality.
Very nice.
That was I don't know really anything about coffee, but I think the blueberries
Yeah.
example really painted the picture for me. That helps a lot.
And it's interesting because that's how it is. On the coffee map inside of the store, you'll see two hands displaying different types of ripeness,
Okay.
right? And just think of the unripened green fruit as fair trade. Think of the super red as direct trade. And direct trade means that coffee enthusiast is going down to the farm directly and paying a premium. Or they don't care about what Wall Street's doing. They don't care about the C market, right? They want to know what the farmer wants. What is it going to take what price is it going to take for
Mm-hmm.
me to incentivize this guy to keep producing high quality coffee, right? Is he passing this tradition on to his kids and to his family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is the community developing, right? Is this going to be a sustainable practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what we're interested in, right? Because I could sell a great coffee. I want to make sure that it's sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm going to get customers that want that flavor profile, that want that blend,
Mm-hmm.
but can I sustain it, right? So that's our
Mm-hmm.
incentive as specialty coffee enthusiasts. We're looking at what is it going to take to keep this thing going,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we want to make sure that the communities behind it are developing and growing at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone along the value chain that touches the product
Mm-hmm.
adds their own level of expertise to it, right? Especially when it comes from the buyer, they
Mm-hmm.
do a QA when the product is received. Make
Mm-hmm.
sure it's the same thing that they agreed to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to go to a micro roaster, right? And that micro
Mm-hmm.
roaster is going to be someone that's been doing this for a very long time, that'll know right away that, hey, yeah, we got some good stuff going on over here, and we're going to do this in a small batch, right? And make sure that we're going to develop the cupping notes that the region produces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a certain level of expertise to make that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that micro roaster is an enthusiast as well. He's going to do a small sample. He's going to get his settings correct, and
Mm-hmm.
then he's going to roast a big batch, right, of the same coffee.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes time. It takes time to get to that point. Yeah.
Very nice. So what's kind of like next? Like what is your goal for this year as far as like your business? And then yeah, kind of talk like a little bit
Yeah.
about that if you have any personal goals or
So, in terms of business goals, right?
mm-hmm.
There's always personal goals, but
Mm-hmm.
let's talk business
Yeah.
goals, right? Business goals. Well, we got started in October 2019.
Mm-hmm.
We came from a location where Frappe Joe used to be a byproduct, or not a byproduct, part of another concept, right? A Mediterranean fast casual
Mm-hmm.
that we were testing in a suburban market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were in East Brunswick under the trade name Ibby's Mediterranean,
Mm-hmm.
right? Frappe Joe was the name of the coffee bar that we had at Ibby's,
Mm-hmm.
right? So after about 2.5 years of running the Mediterranean concept, the data just told us move this into the morning time for the suburban community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see the traffic that you're looking for, right? So the location, the opportunity came available in Edison in early 2019. Made a decision to take it. Right after that, we ran into some problems in East Brunswick
Mm-hmm.
and decided to just focus 100% on Edison, on the new location.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that we didn't have a breakfast menu.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to create all of this, right? It took us about 3 to 4 months to develop the menu. The launch date of a rough draft on the menu was March 4th, 2020. We put it out there. We got a good response. That was just a week, maybe 2 weeks before COVID, right? Before the stay-at-home orders. Yeah. So we had a 1 week good run, and then COVID happened, right? So whatever plan we had at that time
Mm-hmm.
was to renovate prior to the summer of 2020. We burned through all that capital, during COVID, coming out of COVID. It still wasn't getting the traffic that we needed to sustain, or at least see during COVID we kept burying ourselves in a hole.
Mm-hmm.
The hole became bigger and bigger, right? We made a lot of promises, right, that we were going to pay later, right? So monies came due, amounts came were needed to be made, payments needed to be made, so we just kept burning through capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're in a good place today, and our goal for 2024 is to finish where we left off in 2020, is to get the place remodeled, to for that trial user, that new customer that walks in, be able to get a little messaging on what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you come by Frappe Joe, you'll see all the franchise brands on Route 27 over here, and then you see this one guy with a banner, right? That's faded, right? It's been faded for 4 years because we never finished what we started when we opened in 2019, right? We got stuck in COVID, and now we're trying to get ourselves out of the pandemic, right? So 2024 will be our year to get it remodeled, to get going, and that's really what my goal is for the end of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes a fresh coat of paint and a new sign
Yeah.
will have you questioning if an old business or apartment complex is a new one.
That's
I've
right.
seen it before, and I
That's
see a
right.
new sign. And I'm like, it's kind of old. This would be a new condo complex, but it's all brick. It's very clearly an old condo complex. But the sign just makes you question. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sign says everything, you know,
yeah,
from the eyeball.
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very exciting. We wanted to do a little bit of rapid fire questions. with
Yeah.
you. We didn't send these to you, so.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes it rapid fire. Yeah.
All right. What is your go-to coffee order?
My Molly bar with a touch of cream. Every morning it's the same.
If you had a blank check to write, what would you do with the money?
That's funny. You know, it ties well with our goal, right? And it also has a lot to do with my prior experience in franchising, right? See, I believe franchises were made to provide a pathway for people to live a better life, right? To grow their families, to grow their communities, right? So when I look at what I went through in franchising versus what is possible in franchising, if I had a blank check, I would replicate what I believe to be the ideal model for franchising, which is a concept called social equity, right? And basically what it is like, listen, you've got people that are hardworking. They might not necessarily have the means to get to ownership, but everything in their blood says this is ownership material, right? How do you get a person like this into that capacity of ownership, right? Someone with the financial capability has to create that pathway for them, right? And once you do that, right, the loyalty, the kind of gratitude, right, and not only that, the enthusiasm at the store level changes, right? Because now you've got motivated owners, right? And motivated earners create engaged teams, right? So that consumer walking in, they're going to get an experience that they weren't expecting, right? And that's where I believe social equity makes a big difference, right? Social equity franchising makes a big difference. And if I had that blank check, that's the model I would follow. And just to give you, I don't know if you want to put this on the record or not, and I'll give you a quick example. McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. You put a McDonald's on a busy corner, it's a $4 million store, right? Put a Chick-fil-A across the street, it's a $9 million store. Why is that?
Is the McDonald's anchoring business in towards the Chick-fil-A?
No. The Chick-fil-A doesn't allow for their franchise owners. It's a social equity franchise.
You have to be like a former employee to even apply.
You are groomed from within, right? You are part of the culture. You already understand the operating system, right? You understand the core values of management, right? And they don't allow you because you might have the means at a certain point in time after becoming a franchisor, but they don't want you to divert your attention, right? One store, you're going to make a killing on one store, but you've got an active owner presence, right? And that creates an engaged team. Right? Ownership is on site, right? Team is doing what they need to be doing. And if they're not, get out. Right? Seriously.
It's a very different
because the owner can do it
experience.
himself. And that is the culture that gets created at the store level. Right? They're willing to jump in and do whatever it takes to satisfy that consumer that is paying the bills. Right? And that's what I would do with a blank check. Right? And
That's a great answer.
And I believe the opportunity in the world of coffee is now there. right? You know, it hasn't been done before
Mm-hmm.
because the business is profitable.
Mm.
So there's no reason to share it. Yeah.
Mm.
Give us your most popular drink or food option.
Ooh, drink. I think it really depends on the seasonal menu, right? Anything can become popular for a period of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, and if you keep drinking the same thing over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you kind of want to change it, right? You may always come back to something,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I think whatever gravitates on that season. See, the
Mm-hmm.
seasonal menu goes through a rigorous test, right? We just don't
Mm-hmm.
put shit out there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me. We test it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if we have an idea, we're testing it, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
making sure our customers are going to like it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that'll happen for maybe 2 to 3 weeks prior to dropping the menu, right? So if you come in the afternoons and we're in menu mode, right? Our customers are going to be very happy because they're going to be getting a lot of samples. They can say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Right? So it goes through a rigorous test. So anything that makes the menu is going to be a decent representation of what we do. So it'll be popular for that period of time. And we've got drinks that we threw out maybe 8 seasons ago, 2 years ago, right? People are still asking for because they remember it, right? It was their drink at that time, right? Yeah. So it depends. But in terms of the food, the egg and cheese sandwiches,
Yeah.
right? We've got this unique sauce that we've created. It's a red pepper base.
Ooh.
It's got a lot of flavor, a slight bite to it. It's a
Mm.
combination of sauces and a chili dust that we make in house, right? And we call it our
Wow.
smother, right? And our
Mm.
smother on the egg and cheese sandwich is fire. About 90% of our sandwiches go out smothered, right? It's something that I felt, you know, listen, what do we need to do to make be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, listen, I can offer a pork roll, egg and cheese, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to probably do it better than the diner across the street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do it better than the bagel guy up the road. I'm not going to do it better than the convenience store on the other side of the town, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you want to come to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do I create that crave factor with something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were exploring, right? And in that first 4 months, this was the exploration. It's what is going to set us apart,
Mm-hmm.
and is it going to be craveable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or is it memorable in a good way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, if you're out of town, 5 months later, you're back in the area. Man, I had this sandwich at this place, and you know what? I gotta get back there. Yeah, that's what we were looking for, right? Because that's what it takes to run a business. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can totally understand that because I am a sucker for a good house sauce.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What does success mean to you? A little loaded for a
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, success, you know, years ago used to look differently,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, after kind of going through the life experience,
Mm-hmm.
what you want is the ability to be comfortable, right? The ability to spend time with family,
Mm-hmm.
right? The ability to be involved. If you have kids, you want to be a part of that life, right? You know, you can't dedicate everything to business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, am I able to use my business to lift others, right? And if I can, and I'm successful at that, that's success to me because
Mm.
that level of appreciation, that level of gratitude, right, is going to repay dividends forever, right? So if I can bring up a handful of people and take them to the next level, right, that becomes my team, right? And my team, if I can take care of them, they're going to take care of me, right? So that's what success looks like to me, right?
Mm.
And if I'm able to do that, then on the personal side, I
Mm-hmm.
can execute as well. I can be there when needed,
Mm-hmm.
right, for my family.
That's great.
Do you have a favorite book or podcast?
Oh. I think Lime Media might become my favorite podcast soon. I'm not a big reader, right? I'm not a big book person. If I do read, it's going to be very factual.
Okay.
It's going to be a biography on someone, an
Mm-hmm.
autobiography on someone. In terms of repeat the question again.
Yeah, my favorite like podcast or book, or it
Book.
could be like a show.
Yeah,
So shower, something like that.
yeah.
Or what do you listen to in the car, kind of thing? Like, how do
Yeah.
you pass the time,
Yeah.
kind of thing?
You know, aside from kind of doing what I do and learning about more of what I do, right? You know, you got to worry about the quality of life, right? But at the same time, how much information can I get in one time, right? And be able to digest it all and into a meaningful way for me, right? To use on a daily basis, you know. You know, just trying to create that right balance between what we're doing as a startup, right? Staying healthy enough to do it, right? And to have the clarity to keep innovating, right? So, you know, I view whatever's interesting to me, right? I mean, you know, it's not going to be the same for you or anybody else, right?
And there's so much out there. There's so many
Yeah.
forms of information that you can get nowadays between social media and like the news or just like really anything. You're just
Yeah.
always consuming knowledge, I feel like,
Yeah.
no matter what you do.
Yeah, you know, I like expression, right? You know, forms of expression, right? You know, you can find me, you know, one of the things that I do enjoy, I do love live bands, right? Bands that jam out and, you
Yeah.
know, it's the stuff that, you know,
Mhm.
has a transcendental kind of vibe to it, right? That, you know, takes you away from everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nice.
definitely.
If you had to pick one food to eat for every meal going forward, which one would you pick?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would have to say falafel.
Yeah.
Falafel. I mean, I think when we drop our recipe later this year,
Mhm.
it's definitely one of our proudest recipes, right? But not only that, on the health side of it, right? Very rich in protein, right? It's vegan naturally,
Yeah.
right? So you're not you're getting energized, you're getting fueled, and you're not doing the type of harm to the planet that you know, we currently do. Yeah.
What is your most important daily habit?
Checking the coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, just making sure our calibrations are right. Yeah, that's and our signature sauces are on point. So for me, you know, everybody knows I come in and I QA.
That's important.
What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Be ready for a wild ride. Yeah, at 18, it was different, you know. See, I was always entrepreneurial, right? And back then, it was a little easier, right? You know, having the neighborhood kid lawn service, right? That evolved into a snow shoveling business. It evolved into spring cleanups, into fall cleanups, right? So, growing up, you know, my first job ever was as a newspaper boy, right? By by time the routes went from afternoon to morning, we lost our jobs. Had to think of something else to do. I said, okay, I was 13 at the time. I said, well, you know, this place is hiring, right? And I realized, you know, they only wanted to pay me, I think it was like 285 per hour, right? And I needed to work a lot to make any significant money, right? And I used to make a lot more as a paper boy. So I said, well, yeah, I got to do something better than this, right? So we started a lawn mowing business, right? And that just evolved into a decent size portfolio for us, or a book for us. So by the time I was 18, you know, it was the sheer knowledge of, okay, I can get a corporate job, right? And I can get paid what I'm worth, right? For the most part, or whatever the market is willing to pay me. Or I can do something that I really want to do, right? And kind of just enjoy it, but not make the same kind of money, right? But as long as I was able to run on my own, that's what was inspiring me. So the advice I would give is, hey, listen, you know, you're going to have a very wild ride, right? You may not make a lot of money, right? But at a certain point in time, you'll develop the value that's going to be attractive for someone else to pay you the right amount of money, right? Or you go on and just, you know, kind of live a miserable life, you know? Yeah, that's, you know.
So true.
What hobby would you pick up or pursue further if you had 2 more hours every day?
building models. Building models. I mean, that was one thing I used to love as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
My 6-year-old son, he's a real enthusiast on how to fix shit, how to get things,
Mm-hmm.
built, right? And so I think, if I had more time, I would be building more models, right? Car models, gluing them together, building engines and making RC cars, right? Flying helicopters and planes and stuff like that. Yeah, we love all that stuff.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Finally, what's one thing about you that surprises people?
My accent, right? They see me
Mm-hmm.
and then they listen to me, right? And then they hear the enthusiasm that I speak about with, what I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is, we're following something that we're passionate about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, thank you so much for having us. We're
absolutely.
very excited to hear your story. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. I feel like we could talk for like 2 more hours.
Yeah, probably can.
But
For the coffee,
yes, oh my
iced
gosh.
chai.
Yes, I
Oh,
tried the
nice.
blue matcha and it was insane. I'm definitely going to be coming back for that. I've never heard of it and
Really?
it's so good. Yeah,
Blue matcha's coming up on the spring menu.
really, I've never had a flavor like that. It's incredible. It really is good.
It's right for spring.
Yeah,
Right? It
definitely.
represents the bloom. It represents
Mhm.
the flavors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So we
awesome.
put a little stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
Like flower petals or something.
Yeah, it looked
Little
like
lavender
that.
petals.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And then where can people find you? So like where are you located, any of your socials, just kind of put it out there. That way people can come visit.
So a lot of people find us on Instagram,
Okay.
right? Frappe_Joe.
Mhm.
Our website, we really don't pay too much attention to it. I think we built it like 4 years ago and never looked at it afterwards, right? Probably something I need to refresh. But we are at the corner of Route 27 and Parsonage Road in Edison, New Jersey. We're nearby JFK Hospital, Metro Park.
Mhm.
Once you start seeing all the major franchises, Frappe Joe's going to be right in the middle of it.
Very nice. Yeah, such a great area. Definitely have to come and check it out. And we'll be posting you guys. And yeah, we're excited to share. But thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yes.
How'd you guys find us?
I think just through Instagram.
Yeah. Was it Jen? I saw Jen was on your podcast as well.
Oh, yeah. Jen Travels. Yeah.
Oh,
Mate?
Yeah.
She did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. I think we've been following you for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it just came up on our feed. I don't know. Must have just like on the Explore page or I don't know. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, the power of social media.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, though.
To do business today, you need to be good at social media.
I know it's, yeah. Yeah. It really is such a big help. Put yourself out there. And
It's funny. I've got so I'm a lot older, right? And I've got friends that have stayed on Wall Street, right? And now, they're like, I just want to do something different, right? I got this idea. Can I come talk to you about it? Now these guys, they're people in their 50s right now, and they're telling me about their idea. They want to start up a restaurant, and I tend to stop them right in their tracks. Listen, you got the chef, right? Okay, good. Let's just talk about the day that the chef doesn't show up.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Oh no, he's going to be a partner. That's nice. What if the place isn't making money? Right? So what good is that partnership? Right? Toilet breaks. Who are you going to call? Right? Who's going to fix it? Right? You got a water leak. How are you going to fix that? Right? So think about doing the dirty work every single day, leaving that corporate job.
Yeah.
But then the last thing I want you to think about, are you good at Facebook? Yes. Are you good at Instagram? Not so much. Are you good at TikTok? Never heard of it. Right? So in today's world, you need to be at least good at something in the middle. You need to be good at it, something on social media, right?
Yeah.
In order to have a fighting chance at getting your message out there, right?
Yeah.
There's no more years ago there used to be this concept called Valpak. Right, where they would stuff a bunch of restaurant deals into the envelope. Yeah. So now it's all like AC maintenance and gutter cleaning, right? So years ago, that was the form of marketing. Right? Today, You know, it's social.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
You
we
know?
say all the time that when we're looking for, and this is not just us, like anyone, if you're looking for a nice or cool new coffee shop in the area, you're going to go to Instagram and almost use it as Google and say coffee shop near me. And,
Yeah.
the next, the cool picture that comes up of, the cold brew or the iced coffee, like that's what's going to draw people in
Well,
sometimes.
here's the beauty of it also,
Mhm.
and we see it happening. It used to be a platform called Yelp, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of people that were considered foodies, they would go onto this platform and talk about restaurants, right?
Mhm.
Today, it's different, right? Through Instagram, you're connecting with someone connected to the business, right? If I've got a problem,
Mhm.
I can message, right? And I can, the other side is going to get it resolved real fast, right?
Mhm.
And we can interact with our favorite businesses
Mhm.
so much more effectively than what we used to be able to, right? So in that sense, I mean, yeah, you've got to be good at something on social media.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we definitely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even for me, I mean, doing reels, it takes time, right? Like
Mhm.
it's just
Of course.
there's a certain amount of time that you've got to dedicate to it, and you
Mhm.
want to put 2 or 3 out per week, right? Well,
Mhm.
then you're talking about at least the content creation,
Mhm.
right? The editing, right?
Mhm.
That alone could take 3 to 4 hours. Right?
Yeah.
As far as
And that's one reel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like kind of you get what you put into it. And
Yeah.
it's like if you also don't put the effort into the education part where you're like trying to learn how to do it well, you kind of just skip to like I'm just gonna start making stuff, then you might not get like
I've done a lot of those.
stuff. Yeah. It takes time to learn. We've done it too. Like we make stuff
Mhm.
in the beginning of we look back and then we're like, not
Mhm.
making the best stuff, but
You got to
yeah,
learn the
it's one
tricks,
of those
the
things
the
that'll-
small little tricks. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
look at what's out there, see what's good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Guys that are doing it well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. I think that wraps things up. We'll let you get back and yeah, it was nice meeting you. Yeah.
Hey, you guys are hungry?
Oh my goodness. No.
You sure? Yeah.